Welcome to Life in the Fast Lane. This week our show is going to be a little bit different. No one is going to light themselves on fire and no land speed records are going to be set. But we are going to meet a lot of nice people and maybe even learn how to make donuts. Not ordinary donuts, but Mellow Glaze donuts. When we think of South Minneapolis, we think of Minnehaha Falls, Lake Nokomis, and the International Airport. But to the local residents, the Mellow Glaze Bakery is also a very familiar establishment. As I promised you, we are going to see how donuts are made. But first, let me tell you about why we are here. This is where my husband, Kai Michelson, first started working when he was 16 years old. On Sundays, he would start working early in the morning so that he would be done by noon. And guess where he rushed off to? The racetrack. Most race car drivers are auto mechanics, but not Kai. He was a baker. He was called the world's fastest baker. After all these years, he still comes to the Mellow Glaze Bakery every Saturday when he is in town to sit down and have a cup of coffee. Some of the regulars have been coming in here for over 30 years. The Mellow Glaze Bakery has become a South Minneapolis tradition and is owned by Francis Wood and Ed Basilla, who have owned the bakery since 1961. Welcome, Paulette, to Life in the Fast Lane.
Thank you for having me on the show, Jody. I think it was very appropriate that you would choose a business to talk about life in the fast lane, particularly a food business, because food is the most unforgiving of mistresses, do they call it? There's always something that you have to do when it comes to the food business, and you practically can never rest. 24 hours a day you have to think about it. When my parents used to say, "Why don't you want to go into the family business?" I'd say, "Why didn't you open up a jewelry store? That way, when you get there in the morning, the jewels are already baked."
Paulette, can you tell us a little bit about how the donuts are made?
I could try, but to tell you the truth, all the years I've been here, I've always said I've managed to retain or maintain my sanity because I don't know how to make donuts. And I've carefully avoided learning how to make donuts, so when somebody was not available, I wouldn't have to fill in for them. If it were my bakery, I'd probably be going to the Tasty Thrift Store and getting boxes and opening them up and putting them out and reselling them. That would be my way of doing it. But no, seriously, the donuts are blended from a private blend that was developed over 30 or 40 years ago. And there's a giant blender in the back room where they put in, just like you would a recipe, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it's very carefully formulated. The Mellow Glaze product has always been revered by a lot of people because of the quality of the formula that they use and the care that goes into it. Every single thing that's made here is made by hand, so you have to figure that you're getting the artwork of a craftsman each time you buy an item. And it's not like other places that they open up a bag and they add water and that's it, and you go anywhere and it all tastes the same. The Mellow Glaze formula is wonderful and it's unique.
What are some of the other baked goods that you make besides donuts?
Ooh, this bakery must have over 100 or 150, well, maybe that's even too low. It's a full-service bakery. Everything's made from scratch, everything from cakes to breads to cookies. There are a lot of unique things depending upon the individual baker that makes them. We let them bring their individual talents to the job, and therefore, well, we've got some recipes that have been handed down from 100 years ago from somebody maybe whose father or mother was a baker. Raised donuts are actually one of the smallest sellers when you consider the wide variety. I know when people come in here on Sunday mornings, they say it's impossible to choose because there are so many things to choose from. And once again, everything is unique. There are cakes, and there are pastries, and there's bread, there's German pretzels. So many it's hard to even think and categorize them. We make macaroons, we make cheesecakes, we make wild rice bread, sourdough bread. Let's see, we have traditional kolaches and kolaches because my father is Czech. Almond horns, walnut horns. Oh, I can't even list them all for you, Jody. You almost would have to take a panoramic view because there's so many things that I could mention.
Paulette, I bet you've seen a lot of changes here in the bakery.
Oh yeah, I don't remember a lot of it because I was a child when this first was in its quote-unquote bakery heyday. But I think Kai and my father and my mother have said that they used to sell 700 and 800 loaves of bread a day. And imagine what bakery today wouldn't like to have that kind of a figure. But we're talking about a total change in life as the way we know it. Back in the 60s when my parents started here, there were no supermarkets. You got your bread in a bakery. So imagine having one person whose sole job here was to slice that bread every day. There were no freeways. People had to come past here in their covered wagons. No, not in their covered wagons. But the volume that a bakery did in those days of staple items has dramatically changed, and the bakeries that have survived today have had to carve out specialty niches for themselves. I think it's about 10 years ago now that my father had another bakery, and my brother developed a t-shirt for it, which was just adorable. And the slogan on it said, "I got the best buns in the world," all across the front. And then on the back it told the name of the bakery. And I mention that because we have the best buns in the world here. Mine not included, of course. But you can't get people to buy them. They pick them up in the grocery store when they go past, and we practically have to beg people to buy them here, or we throw them out. And for us, it's just not worth doing because they're all made by hand.
Paulette, I know you've got the best buns around, but you also have the best cream puff swans.
Did you know that people now are eating on planet Mars? The food is delicious, but there's no atmosphere.
Oh, these donuts are fresh. They're so good. And the coffee is good.
We have both good food and atmosphere. Good coffee, lots of calories, lots of fun. Do come to this wonderful place. You wonder where you've been all your life if you haven't come here.
I remember coming here when I was like 6 years old, and Beth was teaching me how to count, and now I'm behind the register selling donuts.
I've been coming to the Mellow Glaze for 15 years. I just can't get enough of these donuts. My grandpa and I used to walk around the lake, just walk around and just step over here to the Mellow Glaze, get about 2 or 3 donuts, a cup of coffee, whatever we felt like. But after a while, it just got too expensive for us, so I decided to come down and get a job here at the Mellow Glaze. Oh, and to compensate that working here at the Mellow Glaze, I had to get a job at US Swim and Fitness to burn off all the calories I've been eating. But these donuts are just the best donuts I've ever had. These, the glazed donuts, I can't get enough. They're just so good.
Awesome.
Oh, I just love the smell in here. It's just wonderful. It reminds me of years and years and years ago when I was a real little girl who used to come in here.
I sure hope they have these donuts in heaven.
Edward Basella, and not to be confused with my father, Edward Basella, who is obviously older than me. Today it might not show, but he is older than me. I've been here since I was 6 or 7 years old. What do I do around here? And sometimes I wonder. I make breads, I do catering out of the bakery, all sorts of stuff. About 7 years old, I could barely reach the bench and didn't have much weight to put on the rolling pin, but learned to do it, and now I guess I'm pretty fast at it. Back then we didn't make apple fritters, but we made a lot of other fried things. I learned to decorate cakes for my dad, and he's left-handed. So I didn't find out until I worked for other bakeries that I make roses left-handed. And I didn't even realize that people were looking at me, other bakers, and saying, "You do that backwards." And then I suddenly realized, watching my dad, copying him, that I learned to make it left-handed. So it's pretty funny.
You have a catering business too, don't you?
Yeah, I run catering out of here. Do a lot of catering. Right out of this location right here.
Yeah, I bet that really keeps you busy.
And today we catered fish and baked potato. Okay, I really enjoyed talking to you guys, but unlike you, I cannot sit here and waste a lot of time. I have to go to work, so.
Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.
What's wrong, Vince?
My woman's done left me, my dog ran away, and people still aren't wearing their safety belts.
Aw, Vince, you singing those buckle up blues again?
Some people don't wear their seat belts. I can't believe it's true. Those kind of people get knocked right out of their shoes. So buckle up, baby. Don't sing me those buckle up blues.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
I mean it, baby. Buckle, honeysuckle, buckle, yeah.
Well, Francis, sitting down and having a cup of coffee gives me a lot of memories. Let's say back maybe 30 years or something like that.
30, Kai. I admit to more than that. You probably don't.
No.
It was 34, 35. Go ahead.
Well, I remember coming here at 4:30 in the morning and mixing doughs and making a lot of donuts, cutting donuts. I didn't cut donuts so much as mixing donuts, but I made the brownies and the cakes and things like that around here, and the icings and
all the trimmings.
All the trimmings.
Yeah, but then you did make donuts too.
Oh, well, I turned a lot of donuts. I remember that. I remember a lot of cake donuts, a few thousand cake donuts that we made.
Really?
Maybe 1 million donuts, maybe.
We had all the vending machines.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They packaged them.
And cookies.
Great big donuts. Yeah, and big cookies too. Yeah, you made cookies.
I think we used to make 200 or 300, maybe 400 dozen at a time of cookies.
That's right. Then eventually we got the machine to make them. Okay.
Cupcakes.
Yeah.
We used to make cupcakes.
Cakes, cupcakes, everything. Bread. You made bread too.
Oh, sure. Made a lot of bread. And Christmas time, we made all the sugar cookies and...
cut them on Christmas trees, Santa Clauses, gingerbread boys.
Yeah.
We still make those.
Yeah. Oh, you do? I got a story I can tell you about that one. We'll pass on that one. But I remember another thing. I used to pull up here at 4:30 in the morning and with my truck and my race car parked on the back. And I get here early.
You were just a young kid too.
Yeah, I had some whiskers though. I think I had a few whiskers.
Probably,
and I couldn't wait to get out here at noon. And the first thing is I hightailed out to the racetrack and went racing.
Yeah, you did. You raced cars. And you constructed cars.
Built cars, yes.
Yeah, you built cars.
And motorcycles, raced motorcycles for a number of years.
Yeah. We used to say to you, "What are you doing in the baking business with a head like you've got for cars and inventing things?"
Well, I used to show up at the bakery with my whites on still, so they called me the world's fastest baker. Everybody knew I was a baker. I had my whites on before I pulled my fire suit over my whites. In fact, just the other day we were digging up some old racing movies.
No kidding.
And
you got them?
yeah, oh yes, I looked like I weighed about 118 pounds. I was about as skinny as a rail.
So big.
Yeah, I was a pretty skinny guy. Nobody ever believed that story, how skinny I was, but I was a pretty thin guy.
I think we've got films out at the house with you and your drivers, some of your drivers.
Oh yeah, probably so. That I brought Ed Ballinger around, and remember Super Joe Einhorn, my old buddy Super Joe, and I think I brought Dar Robinson up here.
Dar Robinson was.
Yeah, I brought him up here.
Yeah, I think he was at the fair. I don't know if he was at the house. He was at the
he was here. Yeah.
But I don't know if he got out the house. But those were a lot of fun times, okay?
Oh, that's for sure. Well, that's one thing. Even at my age, I've just never grown up. I mean, it's like...
You said you were never going to.
No, well, I haven't yet. I mean, I've always enjoyed life. That's one thing. I think I picked that up from my mother, I think.
Great. She's like that still.
She still hasn't grown up. I won't tell you how old, but she's in her 80s.
Yeah.
In fact, today I think I gave her age away in another show that we were working on. We were talking about the state fairgrounds and... the old mill. I think it's about 80 years old. Oh yeah, it's been there for 80 years now. So, well, Francis, the big question is, I think everybody wants to know is, how do they make those mellow glazed donuts? Where do they start and how do they end up into those nice glazed donuts?
Oh, well, yeah, we don't hand out the formula naturally. You don't want to.
No, we don't want the form. We just want the
I
procedure.
think you probably know it anyway from before.
Well, I think maybe if I hit my head or something, I think I could spill it out.
Come back.
But it's not in a teaspoon of this or a tablespoon of that. It's in the hundreds of pounds.
As far as the flour.
Oh yes, yeah. Maybe 13. I'm gonna try to think about 1,300 pounds of flour or something like that, or thereabouts. I can't remember. It's a long time.
Yeah, depends on what else you put in.
Well, there's
Flour
hundreds
has
of pounds of shortening, and there's powdered eggs in there. But why don't you tell the audience how we go about making the donuts?
Actually, we blend our own.
Yes.
We blend our own for the raised product.
Right.
That means your glazed donuts, your Long Johns, your Bismarcks, your fritters, all of that. We blend all that ourselves. And then you take it from the blender and you scale it off into gallons. And you put the yeast in the bowl, you put the water in the bowl, and you add this blend to it that you know,
right.
Incorporated everything in. Then after it rises in the bowl, it'll double its size.
Mm-hmm.
Then you put it up on the bench and you roll it out. You let it you piece it up first, what we call piecing it up.
So you can handle it.
So you can handle it. It's quite a good sized piece
sure.
that you put together. Then you let that rest for maybe 5 minutes. Then you roll it out, and out of that you will get all of your raised things. You'll by hand. Everything's done by hand.
Sure.
You'll cut your raised donuts out, cut out your Bismarcks, your Long Johns, your fried cinnamon you roll up, sprinkle the cinnamon and you roll them up and you cut them off. Those all go on a screen then, and from there they go into the proof box. From the proof box, they go into the fryer. When they've come up to the right height, which is again double their size, then you fry them.
Right.
Now, for your glazed donuts, your Bismarcks, your Long Johns, you can use what we call a submerger. That's a lever that comes down and a screen that goes. You put your screen into the fryer, then this lever comes down, and so that it fries both sides at once.
Right, so you don't have to sit and turn them like you do with the raised donuts.
No, that's right. If you didn't have a submerger, you'd have to stand there and manually turn each one.
Right.
But this way it reduces half the time. But on your cake donuts then, that's different on that. Your cake donuts, you have the same dry ingredients, but then you put your yeast and your water in the bowl, the same, put your blended flour in, it has all the ingredients in it, and then you you mix that a certain time on first and a certain time on second, like 1.5 minute first speed, 2 minutes on second speed, and then you put that aside for about 10 minutes floor time. Then that goes into a hopper, we call a hopper, and you crank out the donut still. It's not machine made like you see at the fair.
Right.
You know. So you crank out your donuts. Those you have to turn by hand. That's what you so vividly remember, turning them real fast.
In my sleep. Well, as a matter of fact, I was just back there, Francis, and I picked up a pair of sticks, and I was
ready to go.
I did a pretty good job, actually, for not doing it in a few years. But there's one more step. After the raised donuts are fried, then where do they go?
Well, after they're fried, they go from there over to what we have is a glaze rack. It's a machine that you set the glazed donuts on a screen. You shove them off the screen that you fried them on onto this other screen that you have over the glaze rack. And then you let that down into the glaze, and you have a scoop that is operated by your foot. Press that up and pull that across, and that glazes the whole screen at one time.
About 5 dozen, if I remember right.
4.5 or 5, about that. Yeah, it depends on what you're glazing. Then from there, you put it up on the side to drain, and of course all of this has to be done automatically so that you're like a machine yourself. You go from the glazer to the glaze rack to the glaze machine, I'd say, then up on the side. Then you take that one that's already a little dry, put it up onto a glaze rack where it dries the rest of it.
Right.
And you have your next one going into the glazer.
Well, that's one thing I've learned. I think maybe from the bakery. I've always got about 5 or 6 things happen at one time. And now that I think about it, that's in my life. In my life, I still have that going. But you're mixing, you're chopping. But I noticed there's one new thing that Ed was making back there, where he's adding the apples. I think he called it apple fritters.
Apple fritters, yeah.
It's a good way of using the dough up at the end of the day, because I remember before we used to retard the dough and then we'd mix it into the next batch. But now you can get rid of all of it.
Yeah, I came up with that, Kai, and I'm very proud.
Oh,
to
really?
say I've seen it from the West Coast now.
No, because that's a great idea.
I don't mean that other people haven't made apple fritters, because they have, but everybody has their own style of doing it.
Sure.
And when I went out west and I looked, I said, "Where did you learn to make them like that?"
Yeah.
Because I knew they originated here.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then Danish rolls. We still make the Danish rolls here.
Oh yeah, yeah. That we make our own Danish dough, and that again is mixed, and then it goes up on the bench and it gets its 4-fold, 3-fold, 4-fold. Then you retard your Danish dough, bring it out, roll it out the same as you would a donut dough or any kind of dough, and depending on what you're making, if you're going to make your figure eights, your snails, your jelly type ones, you cut those in strips and
roll them, and you put jelly. Well, also, yeah, in the raised product, Bismarck. You make Bismarcks also, and I notice now that you don't have the old pump. We used to have the pump for filling those.
Yeah, wasn't that fun? You had another kind too before. You had a round bowl and a handle on the side.
That's right. Oh yeah, sure. I think
that would come out one spout at a time.
Right now,
and your arm would be dropping off by the end of it. Then you got so lucky. You got a pail that you could put this thing over the top, and it had 2 spigots on it that you could push down on and get your. And now, of course, we have the electric output.
Well, I have to tell you a funny story about it. I could tell you now because this is some 10 years ago, but when I started my cosmetic company up, that's how I was filling my jars with a Bismarck filler, the 5-gallon. Oh yeah, I was taking the 5-gallon bucket, and I had 2 little plastic hoses off to the side, and they're put together, and I was pumping, and I was filling 8-ounce jars, 4-ounce jars. It worked great until I could afford to buy now we have an all stainless steel air-activated fillers.
But you were ingenious to start out and figure it out.
Well, I learned something. It's there's an old saying. There's more than one way of skinning a cat. Not that I want to say that, but
necessity is the mother of invention and so forth. Yeah, well, I understand.
Well, Francis, I'm going to let you get back to work, and I appreciate all the information.
And well, happy to have talked to you, Kai. We're always glad to see you.
Well, I'm always glad to come down here and have a cup of coffee.
50 years, is it?
No, it's not that long yet, but it's coming there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kai.
Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.
No one in their right mind would do this on the street. Why do it on the water?
Dr. Hanson, how long have you been coming to the Mellow Glaze Bakery?
Jody, are you trying to find out how old I am? Because really, how long I've been coming to the bakery is no indication of how old I am. Because after all, I started eating donuts when I was just off from breastfeeding, you know. So the fact that I've been coming here for 30 years doesn't really tell you very much. But the fact that when I started coming here, I already have 4 children might tell you a little bit more information. But I've been coming to the Mellow Glaze, would you believe, for 30 years. Because why? Because they have the best cake donuts in town. There have been a few absences, however, because when I thought I could no longer get through the door, I thought I better stop coming for a while. Because, you know, each one of these has 2,000 calories. I don't know if you know that. This is my 3rd one today. That's how just lusciously divine they are, especially when they're fresh. Now, I used to bring my kids here, and with 4 kids, each one wanting a different kind of donut, some wanting 2, some wanting 3. I tell you, by the time we got all our donuts, my kids were just so high on sugar that it was really a problem to get them all in the car and get them home, you know? So between coming here and eating and rounding up those kids afterwards, it was really a total adventure. Now, do you have children?
No.
Oh, too smart, huh? Well, that's today's people. Today's women are different. You know, when I was young, obviously the technology was a little bit different, right? And so in those days, everybody had a big family. I have 4 children. But you and your hubby, you're the smart ones. You don't have any kids. So that you can have, how many cats and dogs do you have?
None. Just fish.
Fish? Are your fish donut eaters, I bet?
Cheerio eaters.
Oh, listen, Cheerios are really only seed donuts, right? See, Cheerios are the seeds for donuts. So the fish are really being properly schooled in as much as they already like Cheerios. Do you frost the Cheerios? Do you put chocolate on them? Do you put little sprinkles on them? What do you do for your fish that they're so addicted to Cheerios?
No, they just love them plain. I just throw them in there and they just jump for them.
They jump. A jump? I didn't think that fish jumped. To jump requires feet, right? You have unusual, truly, I knew you were an unusual person. So you have bred these fish so that they jump, right? Like a basketball player, right? Jump. Oh my God, what fish? This is just uncanny. Are you sure this? Tell me now, just a minute. What have you been drinking or eating besides Mellow Glazed donuts when you see your fish jump? I think fish flip, but I don't think fish jump. You and your hubby, do you make this home brew in your basement? Or, hey, have they got a still back here in this bakery? Hey, come on now, call off the feds, the Bureau of Firearms, Narcotics, and Booze. Someone's making unusual stuff here if your fish are actually jumping out of it. Out of what are they jumping out of?
Water.
Yeah, you'd expect that. You'd expect that. But to jump, no. Flip, swish, but jump. I doubt that your fish are jumping. I knew all along that they were doing something here in this bakery that it's so popular that clearly there's something going on besides here. Now, I myself, I'm a non-drinker. I just love the donuts. But the reason we see all these hordes of people coming in here, they must be drinking the same thing that you're drinking when you see fish jumping. Tell me, do your fish wear these new tennis shoes that make you jump better like the basketball players, you know? What's the movie about? White men don't jump, or they don't jump high or something, right? Are your fish in that movie also?
No, they just love the Cheerios.
Oh, listen, come on now. I think that's a bunch of, just a little bit of malarkey. There's something, I don't think that their fish are at fault. I think it's the people who are observing them, that clearly they are imbibing in something unusual, that they have these hallucinatory experiences of fish with these special kind of tennis shoes on, jumping out of a fish bowl. For what? For Cheerios? Come on.
Is she a little strange, or is it just me? Well, as you can see, we've met a lot of interesting people. But I don't think that these are donut seeds. Well, thank you for joining me and the crew of Life in the Fast Lane, and we'll see you next week.